With 23 titles in the last 30 years, Formula One would seem to have been most recently dominated by the British. That wasn't always the case in the history of Grand Prix racing, in fact, far from it. French manufacturers were the main pioneers of motorsport, and so were French organisers, for it was the Automobile Club de France who organised what is largely regarded to be the first Grand Prix way back in 1906. Run on closed roads near Le Mans, it was won by a Renault driven by the Hungarian Ferenc Sis, who beat the Fiat of Felice Nazzaro. A year later, the latter took his revenge at Dieppe. And a year later again, Germany scored a 1-2-3 when Lautenschlager won in a Mercedes ahead of the Benz of Hemery and Henriot on the same circuit. Thus the scene was set. For the next 50 years or so, French, Italians and Germans would battle for supremacy. After the heroic age of the city-to-city races at the end of the 19th century, the first Grand Prix were disputed by cars that were still primitive, but already powerful. In spite of a pleasant, warm and sunny day and a slippery surface, Sis's Renault's average speed was over 60 miles an hour. 70 years would elapse before a Renault would enter a Grand Prix again. The occasion was the British Grand Prix at Silverstone on July the 16th, 1977. It may have been symbolic, but it was a return to racing that would prove to be tough, particularly as it aroused as much sarcasm as interest. That was because the Renault Elf RS01 was powered by an innovative 1.5-litre V6 turbocharged engine. At that time, all other Formula One cars were powered by normally aspirated 3-litre engines. That is to say, twice as big as the little Renault, as laid down by the regulations. According to the engineers at the time, this was too great a handicap to the turbos. But for the moment, Renault were coping with the constant development pains of their new engine and those who mocked their imprudence.
Traditionnellement, les turbocompresseurs équipent les camions, les bateaux, les tracteurs, les engins de chantier, mais jusqu'à présent, il équipait pas très souvent les moteurs à essence et très peu les moteurs à essence très fortement performants comme les moteurs du Mans ou de Formule 1. Donc nous nous sommes heurtés à des inconvénients, je dirais, technologiques uniquement liés à notre jeunesse dans cette technologie. Nous nous sommes heurtés donc à notre propre incompétence, à dessiner les pièces qui résistaient aux très fortes pressions, aux très fortes températures qui sont générées dans ce moteur. Et nos sous-traitants ont eu le même mal que nous à mettre au point les pièces qui nous fournissaient, comme les pistons, les segments, les turbos eux-mêmes, etc.
In spite of the setbacks, Renault persevered.
La période de mise au point du moteur 1500 a été très longue et bien entendu nous sommes passés par des périodes très difficiles, disons où nous avions conscience que nous avions la possibilité de faire quelque chose, mais où les progrès malgré tout étaient très lents. Et là je dois dire que nos ingénieurs, eux, n'ont jamais perdu confiance et ça c'est très important de le dire, ils ont toujours cru que le moteur Renault Turbo allait battre les moteurs atmosphériques.
Renault's first Formula One driver, Jean-Pierre Jabouille, scored their first World Championship points with fourth in the 1978 American Grand Prix, and then went on to score their first win in the French Grand Prix at Dijon. It was an historic double, 72 years after Sis's victory in the inaugural running of the same event. When Alain Prost, the great hope of French motorsport, joined the team in the early 80s, everyone thought that their golden boy would be the final element that could eventually bring the World Championship to the French manufacturer and its Formula One team. Backing up that view was that turbocharging was clearly the way to go. Every other Formula One team had a turbocharged engine. So, technologically speaking, Renault had won. But that was as close as they got to the title. They never finally managed to lift the title, which would have been the icing on the cake. Even so, the Renault Elf Turbo was undoubtedly the car to beat between 1981 and 1983. Prost and teammate René Arnoux started from pole 10 times in 1982, but they won only 4 races, suggesting a lack of reliability which the team never quite overcame. However, the Renault Sport engineers steadily overcame the drawbacks associated with turbo engines, such as the problems of detonation, turbo lag, and the sudden arrival of power, which could make the driver's task so difficult. Unfortunately, the progress in technology was not accompanied by similar progress in the structure and organisation of the team, which was top-heavy and ponderous. 3 seasons running, Prost was in contention for the title, and he should have won in 1983. But Renault was beaten in the end by Piquet's Brabham BMW, and the French team would never recover from such terrible disappointment after 6 years of intensely hard but ultimately fruitless work.
Pendant pas mal de temps, chez Renault, ils n'ont pas assez cru les pilotes. Moi, en l'occurrence, à un certain moment, comme moi je demandais pas mal de choses, on m'avait interdit l'entrée de l'usine parce que on considérait que je dérangeais. Et puis on m'a dit un jour, on m'a fait la réponse, d'ailleurs c'est pour ça que moi je suis parti de chez Renault, que moi j'étais peut-être pressé de gagner des courses, mais qu'eux ils n'étaient pas pressés. Donc quand des responsables disent ça dans une équipe de Formule 1, ça veut tout dire. Donc moi je suis parti, et puis ils ont dégoûté tout le monde. Alain m'a remplacé, et puis ils ont dégoûté Alain. Moi, franchement, j'ai même cru qu'ils allaient être champions du monde avec Alain, parce que quand je suis parti, je leur ai dit qu'ils ne seraient jamais champions du monde. Franchement, ça a été du gâchis. Pour moi, ils auraient dû être champions du monde au moins 2-3 fois.
The Renault Turbo era thus ended in frustration and bitterness when, at the end of 1985, a serious crisis caused the French company to wind down its Formula One involvement. Even so, it had much to be proud of: 29 pole positions, 20 fastest laps, and 15 victories. And if nothing else, Renault's innovative step and their emphasis on marketing and public relations meant that Formula One reached an audience and attained a popularity which it had never before enjoyed. But their campaign lacked that final crowning glory, the title, and Renault didn't want that failure hanging over them. So once their finances had been sorted out, the French company re-entered Grand Prix racing at the beginning of 1989, this time as the engine supplier to the English Williams team. By this time, the rules had changed and the 1.5 turbocharged engines had been replaced by 3.5-litre normally aspirated units. Renault designed and built a V10 for this formula, and it would soon be the engine to beat. Finally, in 1992, helped by an advanced suspension system, Williams-Renault and driver Nigel Mansell won the constructors' and drivers' titles, deposing the McLaren-Honda team. While Renault could boast victory in the first ever Grand Prix, Alfa Romeo could lay claim to winning the first World Championship back in 1925 and taking victory in the first Formula One Grand Prix and the inaugural Formula One World Championship in 1950. The Milan manufacturer's early success coincided with the debut of its P2 in 1924. This was the work of the famous Vittorio Jano, dismissed from Fiat by one of the Alfa Romeo team drivers, namely Enzo Ferrari. The heart of the P2 was the magnificent 2-litre 8-cylinder twin-cam engine, which supercharged gave 155 horsepower, more than 75 horsepower per litre, which wasn't bad at all for the 20s. The P2 story is inextricably linked to Antonio Ascari, who, having given the car a victorious debut in its first race at Cremona, went on to win the French Grand Prix at Lyon and then the Italian Grand Prix, completing a triumphant trio of races for Alfa Romeo. Sadly, Ascari would be killed in his P2 the following year while leading the French Grand Prix.
Cet Alfa Romeo P2, elle a couru aussi en 1925, où il a gagné le premier championnat du monde de l'histoire. C'est un peu un drôle de championnat du monde, c'est un championnat du monde par marque. Le pointage était un peu drôle parce qu'une victoire donnait 1 point, une deuxième place, si je me rappelle bien, 2 points, etc. Et une voiture qui ne participait pas à la course, elle prenait automatiquement, je crois, 8 ou 10 points, quelque chose comme ça. Donc à la fin de l'année, c'était la marque qui avait le moins de points, qui était championne du monde. Donc Alfa Romeo gagne le premier championnat du monde. Et c'est depuis là que, autour du badge Alfa Romeo, il y a cette couronne, justement pour marquer ce championnat du monde.
Later, modified P2s were run by a new team, one Scuderia Ferrari, which would expand further when it was officially asked to run the P2's successor, the P3. This was a proper single-seater. The riding mechanic's seat was dispensed with and the driver's seat was centrally mounted thanks to a new innovative transmission system. Power was transmitted to the rear wheels by two drive shafts, which formed an inverted V because the differential was fitted to the back of the gearbox. Jeannot's 8-cylinder twin supercharged engine gave 215 horsepower in its 2.6-litre version, then 260 when bored to 2.9 litres. Light and beautifully balanced, the P3 was quicker than both the Bugattis and Maseratis. But the might of Germany, in the shape of Mercedes' Auto Union from 1934 onwards, was a different matter. However, Nuvolari gave Alfa a glorious swan song by winning the greatest of his races, the 1935 German Grand Prix.
Ce Grand Prix d'Allemagne, c'est un peu la course qui a marqué la P3 parce que c'était déjà un peu une pauvre voiture, si on veut parler comme ça, une voiture qui avait déjà plusieurs années. Elle a réussi à battre les Auto Union et les Mercedes-Benz. Bon, elle ne les a pas battus directement. Ces voitures allemandes ont eu des tas de problèmes techniques, surtout des problèmes de pneus, ce qui a permis à Nuvolari de gagner la course.
But sheer heroism isn't enough in motorsport, and just before the start of the Second World War, a new Alfa Romeo appeared. This was the famous Alfetta, but because of the hostilities, it would not begin to make its name until 1947.
La 158 è nata a Modena, progettata dai progettisti Colombo Gioacchino, Massimino e Bazzi. Erano i tre capi della Ferrari. Poi nel 1938 Ferrari da Modena è passato all'Alfa Corse di Milano. Naturalmente venendo a Milano ha portato la 158 all'Alfa Romeo.
The Alfetta would become one of the most famous cars in Grand Prix racing, thanks to tremendous success in its two versions. First of all, there was the 158, which won the first Formula One World Championship in 1950 in Farina's hands. Its 1.5-litre engine, 8 cylinders with two-stage supercharging, gave 300 horsepower. That is, more than 200 horsepower per litre. The 158s won every one of the 11 races in which they ran in 1950, including the 6 Grand Prix, which counted for the new World Championship. Then a new, even more powerful version appeared for 1951, called the Type 159. This extraordinary machine reached the peak of supercharging technology. We are still in the 50s, and yet this remarkable 1.5-litre 8-cylinder engine gave 350 horsepower and then 425. That is nearly 300 horsepower per litre, and the car's top speed was over 300 kph, 186 miles per hour. Thanks to progress, Alfa Romeo followed up their previous year's title won by Farina with Fangio's first of 5 world titles, one driving the superb Alfetta.
Era una macchina molto nobile, è un gruppo di lavoranti che lavoravano molto forte sulle macchine e questo era lo principale. Sì. Il ricordo sono molto bello. Sì. Sono 2 anni che sono corso con loro, ho vinto il primo campionato 40 anni fa.
But this kind of technology had reached its limit, and the 4.5-litre normally aspirated Ferrari would take over. Alfa pulled out at the end of 1951. Its less glorious return to Formula One in the 70s and 80s did nothing to eclipse the glorious career of the Alfa